E invece la vostra collega che è andata via, non si sentiva bene, ha preso una copia delle slide, sì, mi ha detto che le avete caricate lei. Before break, we start talking about the analytic workflow of laboratory medicine, and we say that even if when we usually think at laboratory medicine, we just think to the lab phase, this is really just one of the three main steps of a laboratory chart that includes, yes, the analytic step, but also the pre-analytic and post-analytic step that come outside the lab but are really important for the results of the analysis, and in particular pre-analytic step is the most critical for the quality of the samples that have to be collected and then sent to the lab. So what occurs in the pre-analytic step? First, the identification of the patients. I was saying to you that you have to identify correctly each individual, and this means that you have to fill in a request that is usually a paper print of the hospital, but you have also to label each sample that comes from the patient. So if you take a number of blood collection tube, each one of these has to take the same name, and the same name has to be also on the paper print that comes with the sample. So you have a paper that is your request. What are the exams that you want to do? So you have a list of analytes and you have to choose and sign the name and make your signature. So who is the physician that is asking for this exam? The same name has to be reported on each sample that comes. Next, of course, you have to evaluate the request. So read carefully what the request taking care. So what are the analytes? Because if you have a list of analytes, 15, 20, you have to mark what you want to analyze. If you just put the name of the patient and sign in, and you then don't sign what you want, when the sample comes to the lab, we have to call you and say, okay, I have received the sample, but what you want, everything or not, because you forgot to ask me. Next, you have to take the sample. The sample has to be delivered to the lab, and once the sample arrives to the lab, has to be accepted. It means that there is a personnel in the lab that control that everything was okay, so that you filled in correctly the request, that you signed the request, and that the sample is the same, is useful for the request. If you want to evaluate fecal calprotectin and send me a sample of urine, of course you can understand that it's impossible that I can make what you ask me. So the biological samples has to be mentioned with your request, and once this has been verified, the sample has to be prepared sometimes, not always, but for example, if I need to evaluate serum, it means that the blood that I have received has to be centrifugated in order to separate corpuscular cell from the liquid phase of the blood, and so this is a preparation step. Once you have done everything of this, you can carry out the analytic step, that is the execution of the analysis. So once you have evaluated your biomarkers of interest, you have the post-analytic step, that is the evaluation of the results, so the interpretation of laboratory data. So I told you that the pre-analytic step, even if it's a basic procedure and is routinely carried out of several patients and several samples, is the main source of variability in a test. So to be sure that you can compare the results obtained in the same subject in different days or in different subjects analyzed in the same day, you have to be sure that everything occurred in this step is carefully standardized. So you have to do the same thing every time you collect the sample. This is not because you want just to make a repetition, but because if you introduce some variable, this variable can affect the results. And so this is important. Sometimes also the position can affect the concentration of some analytes. If you sit down or you stay ahead, it can be different. If you, before to come in the lab, you go to gym, probably the results are affected by this, because you know that when you make physical activity, some parameters can be altered. If you eat, of course, are altered. So if you take drugs, some drugs can impair the measure of some analytes. So, of course, this is important to be registered, because if you find the results that is out of range and you know that the side effect of a drug is to alter these biomarkers, you have the answer. So it's a consequence of the drug, not the stage of a disease. So it's important that you take this into consideration. And also, while I'm stressing this very easy stage, it's important that you know that up to 70% of laboratory mistakes are due to mistake in pre-analytic phase. Imagine, for example, that I want to evaluate the presence of bacteria in a fecal sample. It's easy because, for example, you have a baby with diarrhea. It's an easy, common situation, and you want to make a etiological diagnosis. So you want to know what is the bacteria that infected this baby in order to give the right antibiotic drug, and so you have to collect fecal sample, and this has to be sent to microbiology lab in order to take sample of this stool into culture media and see what are the bacteria that are responsible for the infection. Okay, it seems an easy procedure, but stool sample is probably the most difficult to standardize. Because blood is easy, because blood usually is taken by personnel that is formed to do this in a hospital house, so you are in an environment that is made to do this. But imagine a baby and you say to the parents, so you have to give direction to the parents that have to collect the stool samples of their baby in the morning using the proper container. So they have to buy this container in a pharmacy store, not just take a container in the kitchen and use. Sometimes it occurs, you can see a lot of strange things, and they have to store in the fridge or in controlled temperature, because you can imagine that if you take a stool at room temperature, you can have modification, because the oxygen in the area will take oxidation of the feces, and other bacteria that were not present in the patients but are in the environment can grow up. And so you can have a positive microbiological evaluation that is due to a contamination that occurred after the production of the stool. Okay, so it's really important that you take care of each step. It's more easy when patients are hospitalized, because you have personnel and the time from sample collection to the lab is very reduced. But when you take ambulatory sample that come from different areas and from different patients, even if you explain everything, sometimes people say it's the same. It's the same. I take just this container of tomatoes, I wash carefully, and it was properly done to take everything. So it can occur. Imagine in real life, it can occur. And this is really a source of variability. So this means that when you have this situation, the lab should not accept the sample, because you can have results that are not representative of the in vivo condition, but due to contamination that occur after simple withdrawal. So here you can see some data that can be useful. I know that this for routine analysis probably is not necessary. It depends, but hopefully, since you hope to be a good physician and to think each case like the case of your life, if you are able to give more information to the lab, you can discuss, and also the personnel of the lab can say, okay, but probably it can be useful to add also this other analyte, because sometimes everyone has his own specialty, so you cannot know everything. And so probably there is a new marker, but you are not aware of this. So if you give more information and there is an exchange, a communication between different operators, it can be useful because it can drive the request of the analysis. Okay, this is an example of a request, just to show you that you have a lot of things signed in. So it requires at least a few minutes of your attention. So you have to fill in here some data regarding the patient, so the sex, name, surname, day of birth, and what is the clinical department sending the request. And next you can see different group of biomarkers that are grouped based on the organs or function that can be altered. So this kind of request is made to help you in some way, because you can say you have a routine analysis, okay, and you have a set of panel, no? Here, for example, you see basic analytes, liver enzymes, glucose, and electrolytes. So this is the real basic panel. Here you can see some other exams that are related to kidney alteration. So based on the group of analysis, you can have different information, and this can help you in filling your request, because you can have direction regarding the kind of test that you want to do. So patient data, and here you can see other more deeper analysis that are made when you have already the diagnosis and you want to monitor the disease or the effect of a drug, or when you have already carried out basic tests and you have seen that there is an alteration, and now you are going deeper in defining the diagnosis of the patient, and so to exclude or confirm a clinical suspicion, you want to ask for other tests that are more elaborated and sometimes can require also a few days more. While these tests are very fast, usually in 24 hours you will have the results. So if you take today the sample, tomorrow you will have the results. These other tests are more specialized and require technique more complex, so they need a few days to be carried out. So you can have a general idea here in order to try to take the first conclusion regarding your patients, and then ask deeper exam to confirm your suspicion. Also, you can ask one single analysis or a panel. As I told you, the single analysis is usually more easy, is a basic test. Is carried out when you just want to monitor one specific parameters, because, for example, you have just the diagnosis and just want to verify if the treatment is being effective or not. The other set of analyses are more useful to verify the presence of an alteration in a specific function. Here are some examples of what you can do. This is an example of the results. Every one of you has already seen something of this. This is a classical biochemical evaluation. So these are the commonly evaluated biomarkers. These are the results in your patients. The measures that is used also is important to consider, because sometimes if you have results from different labs that use different reference value, you can make a mistake if you just compare the results of the patients without taking into consideration what are the units used to measure. It's like you use different system. And here are the reference value, and now we will see how these values are calculated. Okay. There are also other kind of tests that are called functional, because we want to evaluate something that is dynamic in the body. So you want to see if there is an effect of a specific action that can be a drug or a stimuli that you can induce. If you have an oral tolerance, it has to see the oral tolerance to glucose, it means that you give a specific quantity of glucose to a patient, and next you have to monitor in vivo what is happening to glucose level in the blood of these patients. Since you give glucose, you are expected that this glucose immediately go up, and then you have to metabolize it, so glucose has to go down, and usually in 2 hours has to go to the basal level. If this not happen, it means that you have an alteration. So this can help you in confirming, for example, a suspicion of diabetes that is not yet a clear diabetes, but a person with borderline parameters. So you can make functional evaluation by giving this glucose and next monitor along the next 2 hours what is happening. Of course, this test has to be made in an hospital, because if a person has a diabetes and you take a lot of glucose, it can happen that hyperglycemia is too high, and so you can have a shock. So it's important that it's made in hospital and personal monitor patients during the 2 hours to see that everything is okay. Are not tests that they can take at home, but are to be made in a specific area. Other tests are called urgent. It means that even if all tests are urgent, really, because if you have a suspicion of a disease, you want to know if the disease is present or not as soon as possible, because as soon you have the results, as soon you can start therapy. So really each test is urgent, but sometimes you have an urgence that is higher because there is a risk of life immediately for the patients. So in this case, you have a special area with special tests, and usually the lab in the hospital have a dedicated area for urgent tests that is separated for routine analysis. So when you have an urgent, you have another kind of area with specific instruments that evaluate some parameters in a few hours, and so that you can immediately go the answer to the clinician. Okay. Once you have made the request, the sample comes to the lab. And so here starts the laboratory phase. You are not so interested, but you have to know what happened, because at the end, the results of the activity of the lab come to you. So at least you have to know that something is going on. It's not just magic. And the first thing is that when sample arrive, we have to check if there is the correct sample and the correct request. Once this has been verified, the sample can be accepted and analyzed. At the end, the final results for you is the report. And the report has to take the same thing of the request, so the same name, the same data of the patients, and the analytes that were present in the request with the value, reference values, and an indication if there is or not an alteration on the parameters that you have requested to the lab. And the signature of the responsible of the lab that checked that everything was okay and signed the request. If you have results not signed, you cannot use. Remember, always have to be signed, because there is a responsibility also for the test. And how the labs are organized. This is an ancient photo. At the beginning of laboratory medicine, labs were very small and were strictly related to clinical department. So gastroenterology, department has hosted his own lab just to verify liver alteration and so on. Each clinical department has a small lab specialized in the analysis of the biomarkers that can be involved in the disease studied in this clinical department. So we have fragmented organization, and this was error prone because each lab has its own procedure, analyze some sample. Sometimes the same analytes are evaluated in different labs with different technique. Because, for example, the study of liver transaminase may be important for different diseases, not just for alteration in the liver. And so another lab into another building in the same hospital make the same evaluation, but use a different technique. Because different enzymes can be evaluated with different instruments. You know, as you have different television, we have different instruments to make laboratory evaluation, and the performance can be different. The evaluation of the parameter can be different. So what happened is that the same hospital spent a lot of money to have more lab with different techniques, and the results from this lab were not comparable. So now we have not yet this kind of organization, but we have a centralization of the lab. So you have big hospital in one building or in several buildings, and one main core lab where all the samples collected in all the clinical departments are sent together. So a lot of samples every day, thousands of samples. It depends by the hospital. So imagine the teacher recovered patient each morning take blood for biochemical evaluation. So it means that a lot of samples come. So it means that the flow of the lab has to be standardized. We cannot be based on manual operation, because it's not possible that I have one person working with me that take 2,000 samples every day to evaluate glucose. It's crazy. But I have to take a robot. So I have to check the sample, to accept on a web database, verify the ID, verify that the sample is correct, and take the samples on the machine, and the machine have an organized flow that take all the analytes requested, and at the end I have just to evaluate the results and sign if the results are correct or not. So it's in this way the lab are able to produce thousands of results per day, because the sample that will arrive today, tomorrow has to be delivered, a new sample will arrive, and the day after tomorrow has to be delivered. So it's a continued flux if the hospital works properly, no? So the structure, this means that we changed in 50 years, more or less. When laboratory medicine started, I think in the 100, at the half of the 19th century, so in 15 years, more or less, we shift from a vision of the scientist, like a crazy man that work with the worm and just do experiment and some crazy chemistry, to a well-organized space that is really modern and miniaturized and based on novel technology. So you have a lot of robots that work for you, you have just to check. But you have to check every day. So every day, the first thing to do before sample arrival is to check the instruments work properly and calibrate the instrument. Calibration means that you will run early in the morning some samples that are called white sample. It means negative control without the analyte, and other samples with non-concentration that are positive control, just to check that each evaluation is done properly. So you will have a quality report of the day, that is the calibration, and you say that the negative control has to be negative for the analytes, nearest to zero, ideally zero, but nearest is possible to zero. And the other analytes that have a normal concentration has to be carefully detected with the concentration that you expect. If I run a sample that has 5 units of glucose, I have to read 5 units. 4.9 may be acceptable, but if I read 9, it means that the instrument is not working well, and I can't use that day to evaluate the samples from the patients that will arrive. So the work starts very early in the morning in a centralized hospital. You first have calibration. Next, around starting from 7:30, 8 o'clock, samples start to arrive because early in the morning the patients in the hospital are taken for blood, so you have a lot of sample coming up to 11:30 more or less. Next, no more sample, with the exclusion of some urgent sample, of course, but you have another lab for this. For routine analysis, before 12, everything stops. And so you have to run everything. In the afternoon, you have the results. You have to check that everything is okay, sign, and early in the morning, next day, the results are in the different department. And another day can start again. Okay, this is every day for routine analysis. Other typical requests can require different analysis. And so it means that in the lab, since we have this now this organization, we have different figures working. So we have a multidisciplinary team. Like now is going to occur also in the clinical department, because you know that technologies are changing. So you have engineering, biomedical engineering, and computer science that are coming in clinical practice, and so medicine will change in next year. And the same is also for the laboratory, that is completely different. And we have, of course, physicians, biologists, chemical people, a lot of biotechnologists, at least in Italy, because biotechnology course students come into the lab to have practical activities before their degree and for master thesis, and so a lot of young and lab technicians, and also bioinformatics and informatics, because since we have that all the instruments are computer commanded, and so we have a central network to have all the instruments in line and to check every step of the procedure. The presence of informatics should be important, not always these are present, but it will be better to have on site in the team, because something can occur every time. And so if you have here, you can immediately solve the problem and not call and wait for assistance. And also bioinformatics is a novel science that is now growing up because we have novel technologies for the study of metabolites, and also for DNA and RNA study that produce huge amounts of data. And this data cannot be analyzed manually. It's not just a number that I can see, but you have a lot of evaluation simultaneously, and so it's important to have specific pipelines for the analysis of this data. And so this is changing, and I think that more we will go up in the future, more we will shift from biological related activities to informatics activities, because the medicine is changing. And I also told you that we should have an harmonization in laboratory data. It means that we should have the same procedure, the same instruments, the same kind of evaluation in order to take the proper analysis. And sometimes clinical laboratory can be also present, but the main organization now is that you have centralized laboratories. Specialized laboratories can be present for special analysis that are not routinely required, or for urgent tests. And here you can see other specialties that are requested. Okay. This is the organization of the lab. Okay. For today, I have other two topics that I would like to treat. One is this, and I hope to finish before lunch, so we can have lunch break, and we have just another one, so I think 1 hour, more or less, in the afternoon, so we can stop soon. Okay. Yes, I remember that after lunch you're too much tired. So now we have to see some concepts that are related to interpretation of clinical data that usually results a little bit difficult to understand and a little bit boring for students, I know. So I'm sorry for this, but it is important that you at least know that some concepts exist. If you are able to take just some basic definition, it is important, because I know that you want to be a physical and medical doctor, so, but it's important that you know how you can use the different instruments that you have available and how to interpret data. So, we have already said that laboratory medicine is important, that is an important support in clinical decision medicine, and that actually I can say that probably there is no diagnosis that is independent for a laboratory test. And we have said that we have tests for diagnosis, monitoring, to exclude or confirm a test, and so on, because this is the basis of the so-called evidence-based medicine. So it's the medicine based on evidence. What are the evidence? First of all, the evidence that you can take on the bed of the patients. But you say also from bed to bench side. It means from the bed of the patient to the bench of the lab. So what you have seen on the bed, so physically, on the physical examination of the patients, has to be something that is confirmed on the bench. So if you see that the liver is enlarged at physical examination, you can ask some biomarkers, and on bench we have to confirm that parameters related to liver function are altered, so you can conclude what is the disease. And your diagnosis is based on these two evidence. This is actually the philosophy, no? Based on evidence-based medicine that is actually used to make diagnosis. And so, at the basis of evidence-based medicine, we have a circle that is always again the same. So you start from the patient and from the presence of a clinical problem, because it's difficult that someone say to you and say, good morning, I say well. Really, I say very well. No one come to a doctor to say, well, no. Someone come to you and say, okay, I have a problem. And so you have to evaluate what is the problem and what is the probability to have a test that can confirm this problem. So you have to know the problem, what is your clinical suspicion, and what is the most proper test that can confirm this clinical suspicion. So the appropriateness of the test. You make the test, and at this point, you, based on the result, you can evaluate the probability that you were right. So the a posteriori probability that the test confirm your diagnosis or not, and at the end you have the decision based on this and start the therapy. And you can start a new cycle. So problem, hypothesis, test, results, confirm or exclusion on the hypothesis. In both cases, you can start the therapy because you will have the results. So disease is confirmed, okay, you can start therapy. The disease is not confirmed, you have two choices. Patient is healthy, or have a disease different from that you thought at the beginning. And so you can start. If you think that there is another disease that was not considered, you have to reevaluate the case based on this new knowledge. So the first choice was diabetes. Okay, you test, and the test was negative. Okay, you have to reevaluate. Okay, the glucose level, the fasting glucose level was negative. So what I can do now, if you really trust that it's diabetes, you can ask for functional tests and next reevaluate if it was true or not. Otherwise, you can consider other conditions that can give similar clinical signs but are not diabetes and ask for novel tests to confirm this. So continuously, you have to re-evaluate your hypothesis and to use this. So, what is the diagnostic value of a test? I'm telling you that clinical decision taking is based on the results of laboratory medicine, and this is partially true because you use laboratory data to confirm or exclude a suspicion. But to do this, you need to know that the value of the test is present, so you can be affordable that the results that you are reading is true. No? If you are looking to glucose level, you have to be sure that this glucose level reflects the condition of the patients. We see the example of the stool samples that can be modified. So in this case, the microbiological evaluation of the faeces has a poor diagnostic value, and usually you want high diagnostic value because if you can trust into the results, you are not able to take your decision, and so to exclude this. And it means that more a test has a diagnostic value, more the value that is measured is near to the real value present in the patient. So I measure in that sample of blood 9, it means that in vivo concentration for milliliters of blood should be nearest possible to 9. Because I have to look the same thing. I don't want to measure something that is changed in the meanwhile. Otherwise, the therapy will be not really affordable. And there are a lot of variables that can influence this diagnostic value because we are different. And so if I take a stick for glucose evaluation now and measure in each of us the glucose level, even if we are all in the range of normal value, I think that it's difficult that someone of us has exactly the same value. So my value is normal, but she has another value. So she's more normal than me, or me, more normal. So it means that we have a distribution of value in the general population, not just one. So we cannot say 9 is the normal, healthy value of glucose, because this is not true. We have probably a range of values that come from minimum to a maximum, and people healthy should fall within this range. Okay. And when we have a distribution of this value in the population, we say that we have a situation like this, that is a Gaussian curve, that is a normal distribution, where most of the values are just in the middle, and this is the average value, and then you have the same distribution in higher and lower parameters. Okay. Why we have these variable values when we measure a biomarkers in a biological sample? It can depend by a number of factors. Some are technical factors, some others are biological. Technical are easy, are related to all the pre-analytical and analytical steps. So how the sample is collected, how the sample is analyzed, so the technique that is used to measure a specific biomarkers. Other factors are biological, and these are more difficult to be controlled because the technical factors can be standardized. So I know that the instrument has a quote of error, but this error will be present always. And so I can try to reduce and maximize this. Simple features depend by the biology. For example, a child may have specific concentration on some analytes. Male and female can be different for some analytes. If I measure, you know that the production of some hormones is not constant during the day, but during 24 hours we have a circadian rhythm, so we have that some hormones have a peak in some hours and some others in other hours of the time. And this hormone is playing a number of functions in different organs and tissues, so this can influence analytes measurement. So this of course can be standardized at taking samples always at the same time, so early in the morning. So you can standardize some variables that depend by this alteration. So also this, sometimes seems that always people say take blood early in the morning. It can seem stupid because you say, okay, but if I take at 12 o'clock, what happened? I take no food, so, but it can be different because you have other alteration in the hormones, so it can be taken into account. Also this. And so each step involved in the laboratory workflow can induce variability. And this variability can affect the evaluation of your analytes and give you a distribution of values. So we have pre-analytic variability, analytic variability, the individual variability, and inter-individual variability. These two are technical, so related to the analysis. These two are biological, related to the individuals. And individual variability is intra-individual. So I take my blood in different hours during the day, or this week, next week for several months, and I have different values measured in the same person. This is my own variability related to my own factor. Inter-individual variability is the difference that occurs between different subjects. So we measure altogether our glucose level, and we will take different values just because we are different. Okay? So we are not the same, and that's all. So total variability of a test depends on these two factors: technical variability and biological variability. Why I'm talking about this? Because when you have a laboratory data, you want to be sure that this data is true and represents something that is occurring. And you would like to be sure that if I take now 3 tubes of blood from the same person and measure these 3 tubes, the same biomarkers, I want to have the same results. So the results has to be reproducible. If I take from me 3 blood samples and one measure 3 grams of glucose, the other 6 and the other 4.5, I can say, okay, everything is in the range, because probably the range comes from 3 to 6. But what is the real concentration? 3, 4.5 or 6? Okay, so I want to have a reliability in the test. That is the what the measure that you do in your sample is nearest to the true value of the analytes in the blood. Okay, we have already discussed about the analytic variability and all the steps that can introduce some of these errors. Of course, these errors can be reduced. Okay, these are very common. Even if everything is okay, you have a clinical suspicion, you know what are the tests to be requested, you fill in the request, and you ask for the right sample. But it's also important that you consider that the instruments in the lab require a specific amount of blood to measure and analyze. So if you don't fill enough the tubes of blood, it is possible that when you take the tubes into the machine, the tubes that are able to take the blood and to analyze say an error, low amount of blood, so you will have an error alarm and these samples are not analyzed. Another possibility is that the sample has not been properly prepared, because if you have, we have different cover for the tubes that correspond to different anticoagulants that are present in the tubes. Okay, this is true, but it means that the anticoagulant in the tubes are on the bottom of the tubes. So when you take blood, the blood that will be on the bottom will be in contact with the anticoagulant, but the other blood not. So it's necessary that you shake, gently shake the sample in order to have a mixture of the anticoagulant contained in the tube and your sample. If you do this, everything is okay. But if you forgot or you don't know that this has to be done, you avoid to do this movement, and so it means that you will have coagulation inside the blood, and so some tests probably will be not performed. Another thing that can occur, that you have hemolysis into the blood, and also in this case it means that you have that some cells will be broken, and so some analysis cannot be carried out, or if the samples is not correctly stored. So in this case, however, instruments now are able to recognize this. The first, the acceptance of the sample and the correspondence of the right tube for the right analysis is made by the operator, while the volume, the presence of hemolysis is made by the instrument itself. So the instruments has detectors that are able to see if there is hemolysis or if the volume is enough, and to set an alarm. So what happens usually is that the instruments say there is an alarm and say this analysis cannot be carried out. In some situation, it's possible that you can do it manually, but it depends. So it's important to have good relationship with the laboratory operator, because if you take proper collaboration, and you know that you have a patient that is difficult to treat, because sometimes you make a mistake, okay, but sometimes it's not your own responsibility. Probably, for example, in the case of patients that are following chemotherapy, you can have really difficult to take blood sample because you have veins that are not easy to take, and also the quality of the sample, because they have a lot of drugs into the vein, so the coagulation can depend by treatment, not by the operator. So it's easy that you call to the lab and say, I'm sorry, I'm sending you a sample from a patient that has severe cancer. I know that is not enough in the volume, but we were not able, we tried several times, but we were not able. Can I send you this in the, otherwise it's not possible. And in this case, the sample is not evaluated by using the instruments, but it's manually evaluated. So you have to advise, because if the samples follow routine workflow, it is not possible. But if we make manual examination, we can. So talk with colleagues is always important. Okay, and the same occurs for other samples. Of course, if the tube is not enough, we can do nothing. We can help when the quantity is not enough. If there is a partial hemolysis, we can try to have results. If you have babies, if you have critical patients for which it's difficult to have a good quality sample. But in the case you use the not right collection tubes, is not possible. So if we need to separate serum and you use the tubes with not the matrix to make separation, is not possible. We would like to help, but no, we can't. Okay. And so this is with regard to the pre-analytic stage, that can be influenced by the patients and by the different operator, but some variability depends also by the methods. This is more related to laboratory activity and is responsible of two kinds of errors that has to be minimized both to have good results. We have a casual error and a systematic error. as you can see by the definition, systematic, it means that always we have the same kind of error. So systematic error is evaluated as inaccuracy. It means that always when we measure a biomarker, we have an evaluation that is not real and is always overestimated or always underestimated, and depends by the methods used or by the instruments, because even if you use the same methods but you have two different machines can have different performance. And it can happen that two of you buy the same iPhone, one can have a defect. It's possible. The same can occur also for the machine in the lab, because are different, so can have a different calibration system, and they can measure a little bit different. So if you compare the same biological sample and take some indicators in one machine and some in the other in the same lab, just on the same site, you can have a value that can be a little bit different. More they are similar, more the accuracy of the test is high. More they are different, more it means that the technique has a systematic error. Because if you have a defect in your phone, that every way you want to send a message, you spend 5 minutes, you will spend always 5 minutes more. No? It means that this operation is not effective. So if I always read some parameters that is higher in the same value, so 5 units more the real value, I always will read 5 units more of the real value. This is systematic error. And it means that the test is poor inaccuracy. So systematic errors means inaccuracy of the test. And is always the same in all the samples. The other, the random casual error, it means that is an error that can occur. Not always. It can occur sometimes and can depend by the sample, by the techniques, but it's not always the same and is related to imprecision. It means that if I use the same machine and evaluate more time the same sample on the same machine, so the accuracy is the same because the machine and the methods is the same, the sample is the same, so biological variability is the same, and I measure glucose 10 times, and I have 10 different values. This means that I have a random error. So I have a distribution of values in the same sample, so my reading is not precise, because I have an oscillation between different values. So, the true value of a biomarker is the value in vivo, is present in the sample, so the real value. The estimation is the measure that you do of this value. More the estimation is nearest to the true value, more your test has a higher accuracy and precision. More they are different, more your test is inaccurate or imprecise. And the error is the difference between the estimation and the true value. So the aim is to reduce the error. I told you now we have centralized lab, very well organized, high techniques that have a high level of performances, but of course we can ameliorate. So the aim always is to have best technique that help to reduce the error and to have an estimation that is more possible nearest to the true value. Here we can make an example of the two kinds of errors. So we say we have casual error that is related to imprecision and a systematic error that is always present and is related to inaccuracy. Okay, in this case, to evaluate the two kinds of error. Imagine a situation in which you want to measure always glucose, and you send the same sample to two labs. The same. So I take my blood, I share it into two different tubes, one to lab A and the other one to lab B. I am the same person, the sample was exactly the same, taken in the same moment by the same operator, so biological variability and pre-analytic variability is the same. Okay? Just to lab, what I expect to have two results that should be similar, because I'm the same person, so my glucose should be the same. I have just one true value and two estimations being made by the two labs. I want to see what is the true value. And imagine that I don't send to this lab my sample, because my sample has a concentration that is unknown. You cannot know a priori what is my glucose level. So when you receive the two evaluations from the two labs, you will not be able to say what is the best, no? Because you don't know my value. So imagine that I prepare a sample with a known concentration of glucose by myself, because I take glucose, I take a solution, I mix a quantity of glucose, so I know what is the concentration, and I send to the two labs that have to each one not just to do one evaluation, but multiple evaluation of the same sample, because if they carry multiple evaluation of the same sample, we can have information if they over or underestimate always, so if they are inaccurate, and if the evaluation are similar, we can say if they are precise or not. So, what is shown here? Okay, these are the results obtained by the two labs. The different histograms represents the distribution of the values that they have obtained in the sample, and this line is the true value. Okay, as you can see, no one of the two labs was able to detect the true value. What you can expect is that you have 100 times evaluated just the right concentration. This should be the ideal, perfect results. In this case, we have two different conditions. Okay, what happened here? You can say that this is the true value. We have a lot of values that are higher. So it means that we have an overestimation of the value. And in addition, since you have value that start from here and stop here, you have a distribution. So since we have overestimations, it means that this is a measure of systematic error. And since we have measured at different values, we have also an imprecision. Okay? In this case, this is the true value. All the measures are lower. Okay? So these methods seem to us to be less accurate, because all the values are not including the real value. Here, even if you have a distribution, you include the real value. So in some effort, you are more nearest to the real value. In this case, you have a systematic underestimation, even if the values are more similar. So the precision here is higher, because the different value, the distribution is more large, less large in this case. So you have similar values in different evaluations, even if they are all uncorrected. So it means, why I show you this two facts, that systematic error and causal error are not related, are independent. Are two features that are both important, but are independent, and give you different information. So the precision is the ability to read values that are in the same sample, always the same. So if I read, my name is Valeria, if I say Valeria, 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 always the same, I'm precise. If I say Valeria, Valeria, Valerie, Valerie, it's imprecise. Okay? This is the ratio of imprecision. The overestimation or underestimation is the inaccuracy. So in this case, it means that we are giving a value that is far from the real value. So here, values that are exactly the same when measured in the same sample, values that are more nearest to the real value. We will see in the next. Okay. So again, we can have three different kinds of error. Raw error, random error, and systematic error. The raw error is a new entry, but it's more easy because are error due to accidental mistakes. So are the gross error that you are able to immediately correct. So this can be due to operator mistakes, to the use of the wrong solvent, or you are using some reagents that are expired, so this is easy to prevent. The random error, we have said that is a measure of the precision of the test, so this is the difference between a value that is obtained more time in the same patients, and this error seems to be not related to a specific action, while in the raw error I say there is an operator mistakes probably, so you can correct, because if I use the not proper amount of reagent or reagent that have not been properly stored, or there is an error in pipetting the right volume of some reagents, this is easy to do. In this case we have no mistakes related to the operator, but we have small variations that seems to be dependent by the method. So it's a technical limitations. It means that this error can be minimized but not be avoided. So more a technique is precise, more the lecture are the same, but these are on decimal number. So of course, if I have a technique that now read 9 as glucose level, and if I make a noble measure, I read 5, this is not a good test. Precision is too low because one is the middle of the other, but if I read 9 and then 9.1, I can say that it's almost the same. And this is the acceptable rate of the imprecision. It means that it's not so important to have this slight observation are not important by a biological point of view. Of course, if you have one value that is the double or the half of another, this is important. But a slight modification can be acceptable, even if the method is not precise, because you can have this modification. So, if you have a patient that come to you and you want to monitor glucose, and you read 9 today, and next week 9.1, you can say that it's the same, not that glucose is going up. Okay, this is just to understand what I mean. You have to be able to see that sometimes a small variation can be due to a small rate of imprecision of the methods, but is not important by a biological point of view. Systematic error is different because depends by something that occurs everywhere. You measure a specific analyte, you have an over or underestimation of the values. So in this case, it depends by the methods that is used and has to be minimized. So if I take calibration early in the morning and I say that all my standard samples are over or underestimated, I have to recalibrate the instruments. In order to try to minimize this error that can impair the interpretation of the results. So, in this graph, you can see the difference between the two kinds of errors. Okay, this is the true value, and this is the value that you have measured. This is the distribution of your measurement, okay? So, you can see also this, yeah. Okay, so if this is the value that you have measured, and this is the true value, the difference between the value measured and the true value is the systematic error. And in this case, is showed an overestimation. So you have measured a value that is highest than the true value. So this fraction is the systematic error and means the inaccuracy of the test. More this distance is few, more your test is accuracy. So you want to have a good and accurate test, so you want to minimize this distance, okay? On the other side, if you see this range, this range is the range between the minimum and maximum concentration of the same analyte analyzed in the same sample. So multiple measures made in the sample have a distribution that is around this average value, but is a normal distribution. So the distance between the minimum and the maximum value that you have measured in the same sample is the casual error and is related to the imprecision. So the distribution of value in the same sample. Your faces are not so... Okay. I will try again. This is the real value. And this is what you measure. Imagine that you take just one measure in your sample. The difference between this measure and the real concentration that is known is the inaccuracy, so the systematic error. If your measure stay here, it means that inaccuracy is 0. So the test is 100% accurate, because you have that your estimation is the same of the real value. The test is perfect. Okay? More you move up or down, it means that the test increases in inaccuracy. So you increase the distance between your evaluation and the real value. And this distance is systematic because it depends by the evaluation methods, so by the technique used to measure the analytes in the blood. And it means that if I take all of you, your blood from all of you, all the sample will be overestimated because I have the same systematic error related to the methods used. Okay. If this is my true value, and now I take the same sample with the same technique and analyze another time, I will obtain probably another value that stay here. Okay, not exactly the same. Another analysis and stay here. Another analysis and will stay here, and so on. If I measure 100 times, I will obtain a distribution of value where most of the values will be around an average values. So will be similar, nearest. But other may be distant from the average. Okay, this is imprecision. It means if that I measure glucose 100 times in my blood, I will obtain different range of values. More this range is large, more the test is imprecise. A good test, a precise test, reads the same concentration every time. For 100 times, 9, I will have not this, but just one line. It means 100% precision. But if the value stay here and is 9, and the real value was 7, even if I am precise, I have a systematic error because the technique is inaccurate. Okay? So I can have both, inaccuracy and imprecision. Okay? So inaccuracy is the distance of my estimation respect to the real value. The imprecision is the distribution of the value in the same sample. Of course, this is just for learning objective, but now we have no technique that have this distribution. The precision is nearest. I told you that we have in decimal values, so it means that it's no 100 and this is 10. it's crazy because the technique is not affordable and we use in clinical practice. It just means that now I measure 9.9999, 1.8, 1.7, 10, but really nearest value, okay? But if you listen someone or you talk with colleagues and you say the method is not precise, you can understand that precision means that multiple measurements give values that are similar but not exactly the same. While the systematic error is different and sometimes can occur. For example, that lab stop for a few days to analyze one analyte because there is a technical problem, because calibration give wrong results, and you say that all the standards are not in the range. And so if I know that I have to measure 7 and all sample measure 10, it's not possible to use for clinical decision because I will obtain sample and I will not be able to know what is the real concentration, and so I cannot accept this systematic error because the test is inaccurate. And you want good accurate test to take your decision, okay? So it's more easy than appear, okay? So we have already said, I come back on the same definition more time, so to be sure that you remember. So variability can be affected by several parameters. We have factors that depend on the environment, human factor, and so on. So, of course, we have to apply procedures that enable us to control this variability and to reduce it at maximum level. And we have this calibration, we have control of the products. Usually, everything occurring in the lab has to be registered. So the operator who perform each step of the analysis has to be registered. Also the material that is used, you have to sign the category, the part number of each kit that you use, of each reagent, and also the expiry date, because sometimes it can occur that the part number has been damaged. You can have that some kit doesn't work properly. It can occur that also the reagents have been not clearly stored in the lab, or during production there was a mistake. If I have to use colorimetric methods to see that when I take my reagent in presence of an analyte in the blood, I have the production of a color reaction, that is an easy chemical assay to see that if I have the development of brown color, there is the presence of some specific analyte. Cleaning? Okay, probably. If this chemical compound is not present, because during the production of the kit was not properly distributed or was not stored at the properly room temperature, because these reagents often are not stable at room temperature, so you have to take a fridge or a minus 20 degree store. So it can depend also by this fact that you have to consider this is more for the laboratory store, but we have to sign everything in order to verify. And at the end of each day, in addition to the calibration is in the morning, at the end of each day you have the statistics of the work. So if you made 1,000 evaluation of the glucose, you can see all the value. And if you see that in that day you have a lot of highest value that is strange, you can go back and verify if something was wrong. And in the case, call the physician and say that there was a technical problem and you have to repeat the analysis. Also because usually when you have the blood sample, the instrument work with a very few amounts. So you have other blood to repeat and to confirm if there is really a biological problem or if there was a technical mistake. So now it's true. We have a machine that help and make a lot of work, but you have to control the machine. So also the men are still important. So you have to think what you are asking to the machine and what the machine do all the day, and to check that everything is okay. Okay. So, okay, we have already said what is the accuracy, because we thought of inaccuracy. So this is exactly the contrary. So if we have a test that is more accurate, it means that we have a small systematic error, and so that the value that we measure is similar or more similar as possible to the real value. So we want to have a good, accurate test. And the inaccuracy also is due to the systematic error. And precision on the same depends on random error, that is the measure of imprecision. So precision is the agreement between different evaluation of the same analyte made in the same sample. Stay for the reproducibility of your analysis. So I want to be sure that if I measure 10 times the same thing, I should have the same results, more or less, but the same. Okay. And so I need to skip this. I see that now we are tired again. Okay. So I'm moving. Okay. I told you that when we measure several times an analyte in the same sample, or the same analytes in different individuals, we will obtain values. These values will be not exactly the same, but usually, if the sample is the same, should be more similar as possible. If we take our samples that are admitted to be all healthy, we should have similar parameters, even if not the same, but similar. So what is expected to have is that we will have a normal distribution. It means that most of the values will be nearest around the average value, and some other values will be on the outside of this distribution. So the distribution of the values, so the accuracy and the precision of the test, can be evaluated also by considering the standard deviation. Standard deviation or coefficient of variation are statistical parameters that are used to take into account the distribution of values into the population. And why I'm telling you this? Because this is the basis to evaluate the reference value. Because I told you, okay, we can measure. If I measure my blood glucose level, I can verify that the method is precise. I can verify that the method is accurate. Okay, these are all technical parameters to be sure that the data is reliable. But what is the biological value of this value? Okay, I measure 9, every time 9, 9, 9. Okay, the methods work properly, but what mean for me 9 is good? At the end, what the patients want to know, I say, well, 9 is good or not. Okay, so to do this, you need to have a range of reference value. So you have to define what are the value, the physiological value of a specific analyte that can consider to be related to healthy status. So if 9 stay in this range, you can say, okay, you are in the range, so this seems to be good. If I stay outside, you can make a decision. You can say you are at risk of this disease, or you have a disease, and what is the consequence, is the therapy. Because of course, if you say to a patient that have a disease, you have to treat. Your work is not finished with the diagnosis, but you have to treat. So this is the distribution of the values. Usually in a population, when you measure the same biomarkers with the same technique, you will obtain a distribution like this. Most of the values will be usually in the middle because will be similar. Because if you measure our glucose now, it's the same time, probably we have breakfast at the same time early in the morning, and so we are fasting from the same time, more or less, and so we will have similar values. Someone could have a metabolism that is a little bit different because probably in the morning someone of you go running, or some other eat more or more fat. So it can happen that even if we stay in a range, you can have higher or lower level respect to the high percentage of individuals, but you stay still in the range. And the standard deviation is the distance between the extreme value of the population and the average. And this is useful to evaluate the reference value, but is also useful to evaluate the rate of precision. Because if this is not a population of different individuals, but this represents my evaluation of the same sample, more I have a range that is small, more the precision is high. And it means that the standard deviation is a small number. If I have a large standard deviation, it means that I measure numbers that are very different. And this is not a good method. And this is also not a good reference value. If the reference value starts from 1 and stop to 1000, it means that it's not informative by a clinical point of view, because probably I will stay always in the healthy values, and so there is no information that I can take, and so it's not useful to monitor the concentration of these analytes. Okay. I skip some slides that repeat again what is accuracy, inaccuracy, precision, imprecision. The concepts are still the same. If you want, I can repeat, but I think that you are tired. Okay, so other two important things to consider are also the analytic sensitivity and specificity of the test. Okay, we say precision and accuracy. Precision, I measure similar value in multiple evaluations in the same sample. More is precise, more is better. Accuracy is the ability to detect a value that is more similar to the real value. If I have imprecise method, I have a random error. If I have inaccurate method, I have systematic error. What is the analytic sensitivity of a test? Is the ability of the methods to detect low concentration of specific biomarkers. So more a strategy, more a technique is sensitive, more is able to detect low concentration of an analyte. So it means that if I have a poor concentration of an analyte and the method is not enough sensitive, it can fail to detect. And we can say that this biomarker is not present. This may be not true, but just technical limitation due to the fact that we are not able to detect. Imagine the sea. You have the sea. If you have just one fish in the sea, what is the probability that you will be able to see this fish? Probably it's really low. Of course, if you have a lot of fish, it's probably that you can see. Ma da quest'altro lato? So, okay, But if you have a lot of fish, it's easy. If the presence of one fish is important to say that the sea is still life, because there is life, no, everything is died. So you want to have a technique that enables you. Probably if you have a sonar, you are able to see ultrasound and see that one fish is present. Okay, it means that you need a sensitive needle. The same is for your blood. If you have a lot of glucose, no problem. Even a poor sensitive needle is able to detect. But if you want to detect a low amount, you need to have a needle that is highly sensitive. And the detection limit is the lower concentration that you are able to detect. And each technique has one. It's not possible that if I have just one section of one molecule, probably is too poor for the technique that now we have available, even if are really sensitive. And quantification method is the ability, is the lower concentration. So detection limit, it means just that to say glucose is present. I see that there is. How much is the lower concentration limit? So sensitivity, analytic sensitivity is the ability to detect lower amount of a specific analyte. And it's different from analytic specificity. That is the ability to identify just the analyte that you want to measure. Again, imagine the scene. A lot of fish inside. You can say, okay, I see 1,000 of fish. This is an information. But if I say, how many yellow fish you see? It means that not only the technique has to be able to detect fish, but also to selectively identify. Because if I say, okay, measure carbohydrates in the blood, you can say, okay, you have carbohydrates, but how many glucose, how many fructose? They are similar in chemical structure, so probably can interfere each to another. More products are similar, more you can have an interference. It seems that if I have one of you have the same color? No. If I have two people with red shirt, I can say, okay, every one of you has a red shirt, but probably the brand of the shirt is different. So it means that not the same shirt. Okay? The same is with glucose and fructose. Both carbohydrates, both present in the blood, can be similar. So if the technique is not specific, you can make a mistake and read some fructose as glucose. You want a technique that is specific and is able to discriminate between glucose and similar molecules. And this interference can be made also by drugs. So sometimes it can occur that you have some drugs that can impair chemical evaluation because are able, or because are a structure that is similar to the chemical compounds that you want to measure, or because can interfere with the reagents that you use. So it is possible that you have this kind of interference. Okay. Stop here for now? Yeah. Okay. Ce la tornate, era un'oretta? E meno sono due?
Sì, 2:10.
Ok.
No,